Helen's written this book, Precious, the History and Mystery of Gems Across Time. This is a sweeping saga of some spectacular gems and jewels from across the world, across time. And through telling the stories of these gems, she looks at the lives of the different people whose lives these gems have touched. From the ones who mined and shaped these jewels, to those who traded and auctioned them, to those who curated, exhibited, wore them, won them, lost them, gifted them. And as I was reading the book, I figured that these are people who are men and women who are celebrated, sometimes envied, and sometimes were ruined because of their passion for these gems and jewels. And the book itself, when you read it, you feel like an explorer, as if you yourself have taken this journey together with Helen, who's telling you the story, into lands that are obviously unknown to you, but are also slightly dangerous and slightly forbidden. And I was thinking, how do I categorize a book like this? And I just thought that this book has you can put it in multiple categories. It is a historical novel. It is a forensic study. It is a book about trade and industry. But more than anything, I felt that it is a deeply, deeply passionate, romantic adventure that the writer has taken on in her life, in her work, which comes out in the book. So I'm going to, with that introduction, I'm going to dive right in. The organizers changed the name of this session. It had something else before, and it was then called Humanity's Love Affair with Gems. So I want to, Helen, ask you as the very first question, what is this seduction that gems have for human beings? Why are we so attracted to its sparkle? Why is it so alluring? What makes it so precious?
Thank you, Arundhati. I think there are lots of reasons we are so attracted to gems. The first is the light, the way it interacts with those gemstones. Take a diamond. Nothing reflects light out like a diamond does, with its brilliance and sparkle. And light, psychologically, is so important to us as human beings. But I think I even go back further to the first person that ever discovered a gemstone. Can you imagine being the first human being to find a gem on the side of a river and picking it up and thinking, this must be a gift from the gods? So I think this obsession and this interest we have is because they seem otherworldly. They seem so special. And of course they are rare. They're beautiful. They're unbreakable in some terms. So they give us hope for a future because they last forever. But I think from our perspective, they also connect us because they are telling us a story about human beings. How we love gemstones tells us about our own humanity. So I think of the history of gemstones like being a history of humanity.
Yeah, and in your book, as one goes through these chapters, one realizes how you have connected the gemstones to so many different cultures, people, but also civilizations.
Yeah.
And how what we think of the gemstones across civilizations that are so far away from each other, but still the thoughts are similar. Yes. And it's amazing to realize how people have come to think of gemstones in such similar manners. But in this talk today, I thought that maybe we should look at two sets of gems. One is the book, which is a gem, and the other is you, the person, who is also looking at this journey. So I have questions for your personal journey with gems as well. And my second question is really that, somewhere in the book, in the introduction, Helen writes that when she first went for a job in the gemology world, she was told, wrong gender, wrong family, wrong religion. And I got the gender bit because you get that a lot everywhere women go. Yeah. But I didn't understand the full import of those three definitions that she was given. So tell us a little bit about your journey, your love affair with gems and how all this started.
Sure. So, I think my earliest memories of gems was just being obsessed as a child. You know, the child that picks up everything sparkly on the ground. And one of the earliest stories was my godfather who showed me an amethyst geode. And this is what it looks like. It's that rounded crystal full of sparkling purple spiky gems. And I remember I was 6 years old, and I remember thinking, it's like a magical universe has landed in my hands. And I wanted to keep it, but he didn't want to give it to me. So he said, I've got to take it away. And he hid it on top of a wall. And I thought, he doesn't know I know where it is. And I waited, and I climbed up the wall to get it. And I pulled the whole wall down on myself, and I broke my leg. And I remember the only thing that mattered is I didn't get to keep the amethyst geode. So I've been looking for gems ever since. And then I realized when it came to having a career and a job that I should try something I loved.
Yeah.
And this was the story you mentioned about being told I was the wrong gender, wrong religion. I went to a jewelry dealer to say, I'd like to work with jewelry and gemstones. How do I get into this business? I was 21. And I said to him, I'd like to know how to start. He looked at me and said, you're not Jewish. You're not a man. You don't come from the family business. Get out of here and go and be a lawyer.
He didn't say that so politely.
No, there were a few expletives thrown in. Yeah. And in the end, 6 months, I got a job straight away working in a market with gemstones. 6 months later, he hired me. And when I sold my first piece of jewelry as a dealer, I sold it to him. Mm-hmm. So I think sometimes it's a lesson about seeing what the challenges are and beating the challenges. That's half the fun, I think.
Yeah. And I have questions about your ongoing love affair with gems later and what makes it so thrilling for you. But again, going back to the book. So, the book has, the first chapter of the book is an introduction where Helen takes us a little bit through her journey, etc. And then the rest of the book is divided into chapters named after a gem each. And while she deals with some spectacular, important, significant gemstones in those categories, she also tells us a lot about the history, the geology, how that gem has traveled. So, for example, in the book, she has stories about ruby, sapphire, garnet, pearl, spinel. I didn't know that gem existed.
And you said it right.
New.
Well done.
Yeah, spinel. Quartz, diamond, colored diamond, and jade. And she tells us the travel stories of these gems. And I wish, we could share all those stories here, but we can't. So we are going to share a few of those. The first one that I want to ask you about is the ruby. I only knew of it as a bright red, very expensive stone. And I learned from Helen's book that it is the leader of gems. You call it the leader of gems. It has many connections to India, and it is both our birthstones. So we will start with the story of the ruby.
So I think it's lovely that we are both July babies, and it's the birthstone for July. But it's also here such an important gemstone, right? In Indian culture, it's the Ratnapariska, the leader of gemstones and the king of gems. And I love this. It's a story how you see across different cultures gemstones having similar associations. Because if you think in India, it's the leader of gemstones. It's the center of the Navratna, the sun, the most important burning red gem. Across the world today, it's the most valuable gem. And in Geneva, in Switzerland, it has made all the world record prices in the last 20 years for colored gemstones.
So it's the most expensive gem.
It's the most expensive colored gem. So this is a gemstone called the Graph Ruby, which is, I think, the best ruby I have ever seen. That's me holding it when it came up for sale about 10 years ago. And it was 8 carats, so you can see it was the size of my thumbnail. And it sold for $995 $200,000 per carat.
I can't even count the number of zeros. That is
Basically,
there in
what you
that.
need to know is just under $1 million. And a few years later, another ruby came up for sale, which sold for $1 million per carat. So we don't see that with any other gemstone. Ruby is exceptional.
Okay. And so one more question about ruby. How is it connected to India? Is there a lot of mines here where we get ruby?
So a lot of people talk about Indian rubies. And what we have in the case of rubies is the most important origin is actually Burma. But of course, it's so close. We have a whole range of Himalayan rubies. So they come from Nepal, from Burma, all the way down to Vietnam. And it's all part of the Himalayan range where these gems originate. So it gets back to the geology and the science of gems, which is as much as part of the history as the cultural associations.
So, yeah, and another thing that Helen does in her book throughout is you talk about the different stories and the people associated with these gemstones, people who owned it, people who wore it, people who showed it off, people who lost it as well due to different historical events. And I learned that how do you value a gemstone, right? Like, why is one gemstone that you find under the earth so expensive and coal is not expensive, or a pebble is not expensive?
Diamond's a really good example. It's carbon.
Yeah, it's carbon,
so
right?
So why are we paying more for a diamond than a pencil lead,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And the answer is carbon is not beautiful, I mean, in the sense of it being graphite, and it's not rare.
Yeah.
Whereas a diamond has this sparkle, this hardness, this durability, and this beauty that nothing else on earth can replicate.
Yeah.
So that's part of it.
Yeah.
And I think also then the rarity. The reason ruby is so expensive is because it's
rare.
rare.
Yeah.
There are almost no rubies left in Burma. So all the stones we see today are old stones coming out of old collections.
And circulating, essentially.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've seen this twice on the market.
Oh,
So I saw this 20 years ago when it sold for a quarter of the price that it did 10 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so you talk about how beauty, rarity, and durability
Yep.
are the three key things that determine the price or the valuation of a gemstone. But these are the very, like, sort of pragmatic kind of things. There are so many other things you talk about, like who owned it. Are there stories associated with this? I'm sure, are there tragedies? Are there, missing histories, mysteries, all this kind of thing? And I was wondering if you could share a couple of stories with us.
Well, I think these are great questions. Like, why are we really attached to gemstones and jewelry? And you can say durability, beauty, and rarity, but I like thinking as the most important value system is that of emotional value. So why are we attracted? We're attracted because somebody famous wore it. Or it's a gemstone that reminds us of our mother or our family histories. There's something that has an association historically for us, that it's always been there. And there are examples of very famous jewels which have made much more money at auction, for example, because they belong to somebody. And I'm just showing this one here because in 2006, 20 years ago, I sold the jewelry collection of Princess Margaret. So this is the sister of the Queen of England. I was very young at the time, and it was an extraordinary situation to be asked to value her entire jewelry collection. So they called me up one day and said, could you come to Kensington Palace? The head of Christie's said, you can do the research. You're good at research. Come and see the collection. And you cannot put a price on jewelry that belongs to the sister of the Queen of England because no one like Princess Margaret has ever sold her jewelry.
It's like a unique possession.
Exactly.
It's like the possession is unique.
So I can tell you that a 19th century tiara, like the one in the picture, at the time would have probably sold for about £200,000. So that's the estimate we put on it. But when it came to auction, because it was the tiara that she wore in the bathtub, I don't know how many of you have seen The Crown.
Is that
That's the
picture?
famous photo,
Yeah.
which was taken by her husband. And it's sort of personal and private, but it's her wearing a tiara, which is why it became such an important jewel in our mindset, because we know the image, right? And it sold for £1 million at auction. So you cannot put a price on something that has this emotional, this historic provenance attachment until somebody pays for it.
So you only know it in an auction when somebody actually puts that price out. So you have another story actually about.
I'm sure I do,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, yeah.
So pearls are really important in Indian jewelry tradition, right? So I had to show you my favorite pearl in the world. This is the Peregrina, and you can see it being worn here by Elizabeth Taylor, who had the best jewelry collection, famous for her jewels. Most of them given to her by Richard Burton. So it was this great love affair that
And
represented
I guess since
them.
they got married so many times, every time he
Yes.
got married, he gave
They
more
just-
jewelry.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
She said, I only bought myself one piece of jewelry in my life. And it was a piece of jewelry that belonged to the Duchess of Windsor. So again, the value in the history. But this pearl, we know this pearl was discovered in Panama in the 16th century. So it's a historic piece of jewelry. And Richard Burton gave it to Elizabeth Taylor as part of their love affair. But it was famous for going missing. It was called the Wanderer. And it kept falling off its chain and being lost down a sofa in Windsor Castle. And the story with Liz Taylor is that she was sitting with Richard Burton one day on the sofa, and he had a very bad temper. So she was a bit scared, and she reached down, and the pearl had come off its chain and was missing. And this is the best pearl in the world. And she realized it must be on the floor. So she tried to find it without him realizing, and realized her dog was chewing on something. So she put her hand into the dog's mouth without Richard Burton seeing and pulled out what she said was the world's most perfect pearl, thank God, unscratched. So it became famously associated with surviving its disappearances. It kept wandering off, the wandering Peregrina pearl. And I was lucky enough to see this sold at auction in 2011, and it sold for $10 million. One pearl.
Wow.
And it's
so
these
it's not the whole
stories.
necklace, it's only the pearl that was sold.
It was with the chain it was on, but it's
Yeah,
the pearl
yeah.
that's important.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's a good story, right?
Yeah, it's an amazing story. And so, you told us this. There's another story that I want you to share about the sapphire, because especially the blue sapphire in India has many, many superstitious connotations. It's said that this, you can't just wear it. You have to go to an astrologer and find out if it suits you, because it has all kinds of powers, both good and bad. So if it suits you, you could be a queen. And if it doesn't, then you can have a lot of bad fortune, you can be a pauper. So people are really scared of what we call the Neela, which translates into blue, because mostly that's the blue sapphire is the one that we know here. But of course, your book talks about sapphires of multiple colors. I didn't know that sapphires come in so many colors. And so tell us the story of the sapphire.
So, you say, that it comes in every color. Name a color, you get a sapphire. If it's red, you call it a ruby. So rubies and sapphires are the same stone, just different coloring elements.
That's it? That's the only difference?
We find them in the same places because of that similarity. Mm-hmm. So that's the only difference. And I think it's a very interesting story with sapphire, because I have loved seeing how much our feelings towards gemstones across cultures usually brings us together. But sapphire is one example where it's very different across different cultures.
Yeah.
I was working in China and in Hong Kong at the time Prince William proposed to Catherine in 2010. And in China, it's similar, where the blue color, and in Hong Kong, is considered associated with death and funerals. But if you think we talk about depression being the blues. Yeah. So the blue color for a lot of us is associated with a slightly more somber, melancholy association. But in Europe, it's associated with the heavens and divine right to rule. So this is where it becomes
like
a royal jewel.
Blue-blooded,
and
like
blue.
royalty having blue blood and stuff.
Exactly, royal blue. Yeah. And when I was in Hong Kong and they got engaged, suddenly the office I was working in, the girls started coming in wearing blue dresses. And I had never seen that before. And that was the power of one sapphire will change an entire fashion tradition. But in India, of course, you need to have the good astrological sign to be able to wear it. Otherwise, it's too powerful and dangerous, right?
Yeah, it's considered that. So just a quick segue to a question. I was looking at all your images, and all these stones obviously beautifully photographed, and they sparkle. How much of it is naturally found, and how much is it craftsmanship? Just to segue into a little bit of a technical question.
Well, I think this is nice because one of the great things about gemstones is the combination of nature and human skill. So you have natural beauty because these gems are crystallizing into perfect, symmetrical crystals. You pick up a diamond and it already shines in nature. But it's the humans who've learned to polish them, to cut them and to shape them, to make them into that best form of beauty. And I think that, for me, this combination of the human addition to nature's beauty is one of the other things that makes them so special. But I wonder if one of the other things you were thinking about was inside the gemstones as well. On a human side, we have learned so much science from these gemstones. So you look at the history of gems being a cultural, social history. It's also a geological, scientific one. This is the picture of an inside of a Sri Lankan sapphire.
Inside, as in this is inside the stone?
It is. So it's a magnification of maybe 20 to 100 times. And you're looking at these little crystals that we call rutile, silk, because it looks like silk, right? It's like, the curtains in your sari shining. And this silk tells me that this sapphire comes from Sri Lanka because it's long and it's intersecting at 120 degrees and it's shining. But what we've discovered in the last 5 years as gemologists is that if you test some other crystals inside sapphire, a particular crystal called zircon, you can tell the age of the gemstone. Zircon is slightly radioactive. It has a half-life. If you test it and you can get the age of that gem in the gem, you can date the sapphire. And we now know that sapphires from Sri Lanka are 500 million years old. They grew 500 million years ago. We didn't know that 10 years ago. So gems are teaching us science as well as our human stories.
Yeah, and they're also like sort of archaeology a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Civilizations that they belonged in and all of that.
Yes.
I will come to that, but I want to come back to Helen's story really, because that's, as I said, it is as fascinating. I was like, it's like a bit of an Indiana Jones kind of story where you go on an expedition, on an adventure into, and she's gone everywhere, from the deep mines in some of the most difficult and dangerous terrains to auction houses, to houses, as she mentioned, houses of royalty, where she's been asked to come and value these stones and jewelry. And, she makes a case for her profession, what she does, as the most thrilling one. What makes your job so amazingly thrilling?
Well, I think it's because you never know what you're going to find. It's a serious case of discovery. Like, I could be in an auction in Geneva trying on a tiara, but I could also be down a mine in East Africa looking for garnets or looking for gems. And I think we have a human aspiration to find things, right? If you're a journalist, you're looking for information. If you're an archaeologist, you're digging for it. If you're a gemologist, you're looking in the stones and underground. We love discovery. And I never know, when somebody hands me a box, what's going to be inside it. Is it going to be a ring that belonged to their grandmother? Is it going to be a 10-carat diamond? So it's that excitement of not knowing what's coming next. The other slide I also just want to mention, I've been to a lot of the mines, like you said. This is some of the sapphire mines in Sri Lanka. And it's been a wonderful way of seeing, through gem mining, how different cultures operate, but how we are all connected as human beings. Different countries mine in totally different ways because the geology is different, the gems are different, and the politics is different. And we hear a lot of stories about the difficulty in blood diamonds and the mining issues of some big gemstones. But then you have examples in Sri Lanka where they've been mining sapphires for 2,000 years in exactly the same sustainable way. So you have a small hole that you sink into a paddy field. You look for the gems underground and you wash them on the surface. Whoever owns the paddy field gets some of the cut. Whoever owns the electricity to create the mine gets some of it, and the miners get a commission too. So there are these great stories about exploring, and it's one of the reasons I wanted to write the book was that people don't know how the gem industry works, where and how mining works. And I wanted to explain some of that because there are some great stories too.
Yeah, and while we are talking about that, I was thinking of this as well. As I was reading the book, I was thinking of how the systems and how does justice work. And if you're looking at the trade, the industry, how much do you think has happened in terms of being equitable, being sustainable? And so from your point of view, because you've been in this trade for so long, what do you think?
I think it's changing, and that's a good thing. We all know that the gemstone industry has been around since we've been around. We've been obsessed with them since the first human being. But it's an industry that's been very opaque over time because it involves precious objects that are very transportable. It becomes one where people hide information.
Yeah, a lot happens in secrecy, right?
It does, yeah. And it's also one that we don't know much about unless you work in it, which is why I think I like talking about it, so people can learn. And I have seen, even in my generation, so many changes for the better.
Okay.
We have systems in place to make sure diamonds are not blood diamonds and that they are being mined in the proper, responsible way, that we see gemstones being sustainably mined in Sri Lanka. There are still areas that need a lot of work. But I also think it's really important that as the buyers of jewelry, consumers know the questions to ask. So they can say, where does this gem come from? And then they can make a decision if it's an area that they approve of. A Sri Lankan sapphire, for me, is one of the greatest gems you can buy. It's historic, it's beautiful, and they do not have any corporate mining in the country. They have refused international corporate investment on gem mining.
Oh, wow.
Which isn't necessarily a bad thing because it also helps some of the communities in other countries. But this, for me, is a great example where the miners benefit.
And when you talk about your association with this profession, you also said somewhere about we don't think of this actually. How many different kinds of people you meet, and what different subjects come together? Can you talk a little bit about that for gemology? Like there's science, there's history, there's...
Well, I mean, from the mining perspective, I've been to emerald mines in Colombia, ruby mines in Burma, sapphire mines in America, diamond mines in Africa. I've been to as many of these as possible. So there's that difference between the mines and the cultures and the gems. But within the subject, if you're interested in science, for example, maybe you like chemistry and physics, you can learn about how those gemstones are forming, what is making them up. Why is carbon so precious as a diamond? If you like geology and archaeology, you can learn about them underground, forming and being discovered. Maybe you like fashion and you want to know who's wearing it to the Met Galas or wherever, or whichever Indian Bollywood star is wearing the next big emerald necklace. If you like finance, is it $1 million or is it $200,000 a carat? And then there's the romance. Who gave it to who and why? And most of us at some point have seen or know of somebody wearing or being given a piece of jewelry. It's very personal. We wear it on the skin, right? It touches us. No other subject.
It's very intimate.
No other subject has that. Yeah.
Thank you. And so there's another aspect also to gemstones, and especially living in India, I know that some of us also attribute certain supernatural powers to gemstones. There are superstitions about them. They're supposed to have powers that can change our lives. That's why we wear them on our fingers as rings, in touch with us. They're supposed to be like probably the first person who discovered a gem, like you said, thought it's come from the heavens, it's from some other world, not this, it's a creature of another world. And I have often wondered whether the timelessness of a gemstone, like you mentioned in your first response, is that something why we sort of are so attracted to it? Because human beings, from the time we have known that we will one day die, we have been looking for a way to make ourselves immortal. And maybe is it that fascinates us?
I think this is a very good point. I mean, I've thought about it before with diamonds, this idea that it's unbreakable. The name diamond literally means invincible, unbreakable. It comes from the ancient Greek. And this idea that it will survive us, right? It will last longer than we will. When you think about our lives, they're very short. Our lives are fragile. They can change like this. The diamond will be there forever. And I think that gives us hope in many ways. But you've just reminded me of a great Indian story, which is the spinel. This gemstone that you mentioned that you hadn't heard of before, and is very famous, I'm sure. Many of you will have heard of spinel in the Maharaja's collections in great Indian treasuries. It was the gemstone that was considered more valuable than pearls and diamonds and emeralds. And the really important spinels in the 16th and 17th and 18th centuries were engraved with the names of the different Maharajas and the different rulers and the Indian royal families. So you see them being used like a family tree where you have Jahangir written on spinels because then it's handed down in the family and it's a sign of that person surviving in stone. Wow. So I love this idea that gems, they not only survive us, but they can represent our survival if you come from a very important Indian family, for example.
So you want to make your name like sort of unerasable from history. So then you put it on
better
a
than a
gemstone.
tombstone, right?
Yeah.
Gemstones beat tombstones.
Yeah. True. And tell us a little bit about the superstitions also, because in India there are lots of superstitions, like I told you about the sapphire one. But different cultures have you come across any superstition?
Yeah.
And you also shared a story with me about a supernaturalness of a gemstone that you once had.
Actually, it's this one here.
Okay.
So the one
Tell
I've got
us
on the
this
street.
story.
Yeah, you'll like this one, I think.
Yeah.
So this, by the way, notice the color. It's blue, right? It's not a sapphire. This is a blue diamond. So it's a very rare gem. And it was originally a 35 carat big blue diamond, probably came from the Indian diamond mines of Golconda in the 16th century. We're not sure, but likely. And it was traveled through many royal families. It came into Europe, it went through German families, Spanish, and then it disappeared and got lost. And in the 20th century, nobody knew where it was. And it reappeared at auction, and it came up for sale, and I remember picking it up in my hand, and it was this big blue stone that looked like a pool of water. And it's the only time in my life I felt like a gemstone sucked a part of my soul out of me. I looked into it, and it was like a little bit of me died. It came away, and I felt empty afterwards. Yeah. And I'm a bit of a scientist, so I was looking at this thinking, how did it do that? One of the reasons is the color. It's a grayish blue. Blue has, and I'm sure this is where the Indian tradition makes sense, blue can make us feel a bit sad sometimes. And this gray color, and you see this big hole at the back? It's the last facet in the gem. The light went through, so I went through with it. But then the other stories are maybe it's been in so many families, the history and the superstition is real. Yeah. Who knows? Yeah. But this stone had a huge effect on me.
You also have a story about the opal.
Yeah, so just like you have bad luck in India for the sapphires, in England we have the story of the opal being bad luck. The opal, I don't know if you know, it's a stone with all the colors in it, and it can be red and yellow and green and blue all at the same time. But this stone has 10% water in the structure, which means if it gets dehydrated, like we do here at this temperature, it can crack. And there was a book written in the 19th century where the lead heroine had an opal, and the opal broke and she died. So her soul was associated with this stone. And after that, the opals in the British Royal Collection were replaced by the Queens of England because they felt it was bad luck. So there was a very famous tiara.
They actually took it out of the jewelry.
They took the opals out of Queen Victoria's opal tiara and they put in rubies because they thought it was better luck. Because it was bad luck.
Yep. Yeah. So these had, and how expensive are opals generally then? Does this
it can
devalue
vary.
them?
Oh, if they break, it does, because you can't repair them. Once they're broken, they're broken.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
but
it can change the value.
But the bad luck bit doesn't change the price.
What
The
doesn't?
superstition about the bad luck doesn't
It
change the
does.
price.
In England, for example, they do not make a lot of money. So I
okay.
wouldn't necessarily sell my opals in the UK. I would probably take them somewhere else.
Yeah.
But it's more my parents' generation and older
Then,
now.
yeah. And another stone that I felt fascinated by when I read your book was, and which was different from all the other gems that I read about, was the jade.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And because it has a spiritual, like while all the others had opulence attached to it, value of a different kind attached to it, the jade seemed to have a spiritual quality, a sense of dignified reverence about it, almost like something that you would use for worship rather than adornment. Like it had that quality about it. Tell us a little bit about the jade stone.
That's a lovely way of introducing jade. So it's known as the gem of heaven because, especially in Chinese culture, where it's so valuable and so prominent, they associated jade with the connection to the divine. So it could connect you to the gods, it helped you into the afterlife. In the 1st century AD, the princes of China would have jade suits made up, all in tiny pieces of jade sewed together to cover their bodies, so that it would protect the body into the afterlife and keep the spirit of the person, so the spirit could continue. So this is in China, right? What's amazing is that there are jade cultures also in the Middle Americas, in Guatemala, so from the Olmecs, the Aztecs, and the Incas.
So far away from China.
Because they find them in those two places. So
Okay.
jade's found in China, it's also found in Guatemala. But the belief systems that developed 3 to 4 to 5,000 years ago are the same.
Wow.
And the Middle American beliefs are that it connects you to the gods. They made jade masks for burials because the belief was that it protected your spirit into the afterlife. And it's this green-blue color, which again is connected to living, vibrant regeneration. And I think that's what the connection must be. But I love this idea that it is a very spiritual gemstone, as you say.
Yeah, and so we have still a little bit of time before I have
good.
to open up. So, but before I go to that question, I want to ask you about one more stone because of the story of it about it, which is the emerald and the Cheapside hole from where that particular emerald, the Colombian emerald, came from. So tell us a little bit about that story.
I don't think I've got a picture of it, have I? I think
Do
I
you?
hid it. Let's
Yeah?
have a look and
Just
see.
see if you have.
No, I
later,
think not.
Later on, no.
Let's have a little peek and see if we
Yeah.
saved it. No, I took it out, I think.
Okay,
Never mind.
okay,
So we can
yeah.
tell you about it.
Yeah.
So, you know emerald is green. That's a good start. But this particular emerald has the most amazing story. In 1912, in a house in East London, there were workmen that were destroying the house. They were knocking it down, and they were going through the floorboards to dig up the floor to put in new foundations. And one of the workmen took his pickaxe through the floor, and suddenly something glinted out from under the floorboards. And what they discovered was the most important collection of 16th century jewelry that's ever survived. And in it, there was an emerald that was this big, which, as emeralds go, is enormous. It was hexagonal in shape, and into the emerald, they had set a watch. So there was a watch movement to tell the time inside this emerald crystal. It had a lid that was so transparent you could see the time through the lid, all hexagonal in shape. This emerald was one of the first emeralds ever to be brought from Colombia into Europe since the conquistadors went over in the search for gold. They found emeralds. And it was discovered buried under the floorboards in a house in London. And what's amazing is through the science today, we've been able to test that emerald to discover it comes from a particular mine called the Muso mine in Colombia. And I visited that mine 10 years later when I held the emerald, and it's still mining today. So 500-600 years ago, this emerald was brought across the world. But we don't know why it was buried. Was it buried because it was the fire of London? Was it buried because of the Great Plague? Was somebody running away to come back? Sometimes gems don't give up all their stories and all their secrets, and there are more things to find.
Thank you. I was fascinated, and Emerald is the first chapter of the no after Ruby, or
That was the
yeah,
first
it's
one.
the first
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
And as I was reading Helen's book, this chapter really got to me because of the adventure that was associated with it. I'm sure people will have questions for Helen, so I have one last question for you. And the book talks a lot about the gems that women wear and women associated with the gems, the queens, the princesses, the duchesses, the celebrity actors, artists, all of them. But I wondered, what is the role that men play in the ownership world of these gems? And there were so many India stories that
Yeah.
I have to ask Helen to share some of those stories.
It's
with
such
us.
a good question because, especially here, India understands how to wear jewelry. You guys have such an amazing gemstone culture here, and it's for men and for women. And I think this, you ask about men wearing jewelry, I go straight to Indian royalty because nobody wears jewelry like Indian princes. And there's a wonderful picture I'm showing you on screen of the Maharaja of Patiala, who is wearing, you can't see the full picture, but what he's actually wearing is a massive emerald belt, a huge diamond necklace, another diamond collar, natural pearl earrings, and a tiara by Cartier. That is not too much. He looks amazing in all of this. And this story actually goes back to probably the biggest jewelry commission of the 20th century, where I think it was this Maharaja's father, the earlier Maharaja of Patiala, commissioned Cartier in 1928 to make all of their treasury into Cartier jewels. They wanted the new style for their gems. This necklace, you can see on the picture it's large. It's too big for me. It goes from my neck all the way down to my trousers. I have tried it, yeah. It's huge. But this is how to wear jewelry, right? And we don't just have the Maharaja of Patiala, we have the Maharaja of Nawanagar as well. And his ruby necklace, we talked about rubies earlier. This is probably the best ruby necklace in the entire world. And of course, the Indian treasuries of rubies were unrivaled. This was 200 carats of Burmese rubies made into a collar in 1937. And with it, he also had a gem called the tiger's eye, which is this huge 60-carat orange diamond, which he had mounted as a turban ornament. And
So
which
that's a diamond
it's
in
a
the second
diamond.
picture.
The second
Yeah?
picture
Yeah?
is a diamond.
Yeah.
So it's an orange-colored diamond that's very rare. And I know that it was made up the year of the coronation in 1937, but not worn. But we do know that it was worn to the last king's coronation in Britain by a lady. So we still have this unisex idea in jewels today. But it's lovely seeing Indian princes wearing jewelry.
What are some of the things that you see in the future of the gemology industry? A couple of things that you would like to see in the next decade or so from your
I'd
perspective.
love to see more men wearing more jewelry today, which we've seen a bit in sort of Hollywood. You see Harry Styles wearing a pearl necklace, a few brooches. I'd love to see it becoming more democratized. But of course, it's a high value item, so not everyone has access. But one of the things we're seeing is this new development in synthetic diamonds, which are now much more cheap than real natural diamonds. So suddenly, there's going to be a whole new trend of diamond jewelry that's easy to wear because it's going to be less expensive.
Yeah.
So I see this sort of a democratization of jewelry wearing, which I think is very good for us. You know, we've got this tradition of power and class and status. But as time goes, we find different ways of wearing it, and I like that. I would love to see more tiaras, but I can't see that happening anytime soon.
Yeah. Tiaras are your favorite, isn't
Oh,
it?
who doesn't love a tiara?
So, lovely discussion. Thanks very much. I'm very curious, Helen, why certain people, is it classes of people or people, I mean, who are these people who sell or auction their jewelry? It's so hard to imagine as an Indian, even where some families have very large stores of it, that they would sell it unless there's distress. and even not any kind of distress. It's not like you fall sick and you sell your gold jewelry and pay your bills. It's supposed to be, I don't know, something that's not happened yet, for which many people would consider.
So, yes, exactly. If you have a collection of jewelry, why would you part with it? Especially when it comes from a family background, it's got these associations with your ancestors, your heritage. It's probably very personal for you, right? Is that part of it? Yeah. We have a saying in the auctions that there are reasons why people sell. I didn't like it very much, but the phrase was, it was the 3 Ds. So it's death, divorce, and debt. So somebody dies, like with Princess Margaret, you have to split the inheritance because there's an inheritance tax. So it's a way of covering the taxes. You have debts. Jewelry is a very easy form of creating and, moving wealth around. And then, of course, divorce. People don't keep their engagement rings, I think, if they are out of that romantic relationship. So you see those different reasons. But I think the story is that gemstones, they get recycled. This is part of their story. I'm traditionalist like you. I like the ideas of them staying in collections. I'd like everything to stay in its original collection and to gain more long-term history. But the reality is, each time it gets bought by somebody new, a new part of its history is made. That blue diamond I told you about, there was a second part to that story. It got sold, and it was bought by the most famous diamond cutter in the world, Lawrence Graff, and he dared to recut it. So it was a 35-carat diamond. He polished it down to 31 carats to get rid of the grey colour, to make the blue stronger. He quadrupled the value. But the German newspapers, because the stone had been in Germany for 300 years, they wrote an obituary of the gemstone because they said he'd killed it.
I agree with the
it's
papers.
now part of the story. I'm telling you a story about a gem that's got even more history than before. So I like the idea of living history in gem collections.
So the really wealthy, the ones who have fortunes to, let others inherit, they can't bring it. They can't summon the strength to. Okay, you take the park, you take the palace. I'll keep the jewels. It doesn't work like that.
It has happened in the past. I can think of various collections where there have been 3 brothers, and one has got the property, one has got the diamonds, and one's got the business.
I'm relieved.
Yes. And of course, with diamonds, if you have several, you can give one to each. You usually have a few pieces of jewelry in a collection, but only maybe one major property. So those are the ones that can be split up more easily.
Yes, so for example, again, if you have a bracelet or a chain or string of pearls, which you have only one like that, and you have 2 daughters-in-law,
Yes.
then the big question is, do you take that multiple layer chain or do you try to buy another one? And will both of them be equally satisfied?
Exactly. What do you do when you've got one piece of jewelry and several children? Do you get a matching one? Do you split it up? I can think of lots of examples where diamonds have been taken out of family necklaces and given out to the different children. There is an Indian story for one of the necklaces of the Nawanagar collection, and it was known as the most historic diamond necklace ever created. It had pink, blue, green, and red diamonds in it. And when it was made in the 1930s, Jacques Cartier said this diamond necklace could never be made at another time in history. Still true nearly 100 years today. But the story was that when the family came to needing to sell it, they didn't know how to split it up, and the children were arguing over it. One of the stories I heard was that the mother took a meat cleaver in the kitchen and just went, bam, you take this half, you take the other. I don't know how true it is, but it tells you that, I suppose, the transitional element to gemstones and the ways in which they keep coming round and getting split up and sold on. I think they wouldn't do it. They probably, maybe if they are at home, I don't know. I don't think so, because it's a bit like minimalizing your life and downscaling. You make a choice to do it, you get used to it, you've enjoyed. Elizabeth Taylor's a great example. She said, I don't own my jewelry, I'm a custodian of it.
Who said
I'm
that?
Elizabeth Taylor.
Oh, wow.
I'm looking after my jewelry before the next person looks after it. And you know, having jewelry is not a need. It's very much a luxury. So you have it, you don't. I think you can be kind of a bit philosophical about it. You're not going to die without your diamond tiara.
Yeah.
Ma'am, I think I would like to say that you are a wonderful storyteller. So, is there any adventurous story in your long journey of this gemmology life that you can share with us? Is there any adventurous things that you have encountered in your life?
Yes, I have a few. When I went to go and look for sapphires in Montana, in the Rocky Mountains in America, I went on my own, and the mine was owned by a friend of mine. And I think I write about this in the book. It might even be an extra story. And I was staying on my own in the mine. Physically, there was a cabin. I slept in it. Everyone else who worked in the mine went home to their families. And each night, the generator would cut out. You know, you're in the mountains. I was in a wooden cabin. And I remember noticing that the wall of the cabin sort of had scratches and bullet holes in it. And I was like, whatever. But the generator would cut out at night. And every time I tried to take a shower, the power would go off. And I would have to run outside trying to have a shower, so without my clothes on, pull the generator starting, and run back in for the hot water. And after 3 days, I said to the mine owners, look, I don't mind the generator not working, but I noticed that there's bullet holes and things on the cabin. They're like, yeah, that's from the bears that were getting shot. And I didn't realize I was staying where there was bear country, and I should not have been wandering around outside. But you see this in many countries. I've been in rivers looking in Sri Lanka for sapphires. I've come out of the sapphire panning to see downstream a massive crocodile. I've been underground in Colombia, where we were walking through the Colombian emerald mines, 70 meters underground. It's 40 degrees centigrade, 80% humidity. It's a very tough environment. And as we were walking along, a 1-ton boulder came down straight in front of me. And somebody just got me out of the way in time. Even the roads to get there, we were nearly run off the roads many times in the Andes. I can think of so many examples. It's this sort of story of search for gemstones is dangerous. It's exciting, but these are livelihoods people are putting on the line to find us beautiful objects. That's given me an extra respect for the people who mine them. And I think that story should be told. Well, can I just add, to come to India, where the history and tradition for jewelry is so strong, to be at a book festival of this magnitude, to be invited by DC Books to come to Kerala, to be here with you, this has been one of my highlights that I would write about in the book if I wrote again. So thank you to Kerala for making this a wonderful experience, and just keep loving jewelry and keep loving gemstones, please.
This is also among the states in India. I think Kerala is one state that really values its jewelry. You will find more jewelry shops per square kilometers than you will find in any other state.
I went to SM Street and found the gold quarter already.
Thank you. You've been a lovely audience. Thank you for being with us today. And thank you so much, Helen. Unfortunately, Helen's book is not available at the bookstore of the festival, but it is available online. Please buy it. It's like a thriller. It's a detective story. Forget the gemstones. Each of her chapters are like one detective story, one exploration story. So I absolutely am honored, thrilled to do this with you, Helen. Thank you.
It's been lovely. Thank you so much, Arundhati.